Hello again, everybody, and welcome into the Take the North podcast, along with Dan Wiederer of The Athletic. I am Mark Grote of 104.3 The Score. Danny boy, we had a Super Bowl. The season is kind of over before it starts again, or it just keeps on starting or never ending, but the Seahawks beat the Patriots 29-13, so that's closure enough for me.
The 2025 season is now in the rearview mirror, and it closed on Sunday in Northern California, and we watched a very miserable first half of a Super Bowl game on Sunday, and the Seahawks really were never threatened once they took control of that game fully in the second half. And I think you agree. I know you talked it out on the radio on Monday. This is our first chance to kind of gather in this forum to talk it out, but I think you'd agree that the lack of eventfulness of that game was a little bit of a letdown. And look, like I know people say, look, like you should expect a defensive struggle between those two teams. But in the first half, it wasn't just that no one was scoring. There were no takeaways either. So it was just the first half of no big moments. And you're like, this is the Super Bowl. Let's get a big moment. And all it was Jason Myers kicking field goals.
Well, and I think I mentioned this too, that the 2025 Bears season sort of prepared us for, not last year, but the year before, prepared us for bad halves of football.
Sure.
See at Detroit. I mean, there were so many times where we did this podcast in that year, Dan. We were talking about, oh my God, the numbers in the first half were just absolutely horrendous. So it made me think of that from a Bears perspective. And then Dan, what you said is what was the overwhelming opinion on the Super Bowl was that it was boring, that it was a snoozer until it got interesting in the fourth quarter. The party that I attended, all good sports fans, and everybody was like making jokes about how boring the game was. It reminded me, or maybe proved to me, or showed me, maybe this was a revelation, that people do need offense like that.
Sure.
You can talk about how much you love defense and running, and that's ultimately which, of course, won the Super Bowl. But people still need to see what the NFL wants you to see, what the NFL has set up with the rules and the regulations. The NFL wants offense, and they've been pushing in that direction for so long, and now it is confirmed by the masses. The masses want offense too, as much as we talk up defense and running and fundamentals and all that. You want the deep pass.
Well, what people want is an adrenaline rush, right? And that's why the Caleb Williams conversation got to where it got to at the end of this season, because he was providing regular adrenaline rushes, and that's what people are seeking. Like that's the drug of the NFL, and that's what you want. The biggest game on the biggest stage didn't provide many on Sunday, and it is what it is. And like, I know you and I talked on 670 The Score on Monday, but the Seahawks defensively were phenomenal all season long. And they may have been at their best in the last game of the year, which is pretty impressive to do what they did in that game. Again, the Patriots go 3 quarters of football, averaging 2 yards per play. They couldn't get anything going. Offensive line is uncomfortable. Drake Maye, by extension, is uncomfortable. The game's kind of getting away from them. And, I see you see back and forth commentary after the game on social media and things and saying, look, like the Seahawks took field goals. Well, you can take field goals in a game like that when your defense is that dominant. When you're pitching a shutout in that regard, it's easy to settle for the 3 points rather than going for it on fourth down and trying to get the 7. And so there was a game flow to that was impressive to watch the Seahawks manage. And again, like the more I got familiar with that Seahawks defense through their run in the postseason, the more you appreciated just kind of how cohesive they were, how on top of Mike McDonald's plan they were. And they've got guys now, right? Like they've got guys up front that make a difference. And I think one of the guys that was, a guy we studied going into the 2024 draft, because we knew the Bears were taking Caleb Williams at 1, but we also knew they had a pick at number 9, was Byron Murphy, who's a big anchor in the middle of that defensive line. And that, for me, the reason I bring that up is because I think that's probably going to be where the Bears lean this offseason, is trying to find some more disruption on their interior to provide a little bit of that engine that makes everything else go.
Right. And that's, Javon Dexter, beware. Obviously you have Grady Jarrett there, who I would say did not have the first season under the new contract that the Bears gave him. It didn't feel fulfilling, I'll just say. And some of that has to do with, a lot of it has to do with injury. I don't know if we got the Grady Jarrett that we eventually are going to get, but Yeah, that's a great point. That's a position of need for the Bears to get better, and we'll get to it. We'll get to Maxx Crosby without cleaning out the cupboard completely
Yeah.
to get these moves. But yeah, and we will get into that in a second. I wanted to say on the little local flair for the Seattle defense at the Super Bowl party that I was at. Again, a gathering of friends, and one of my friends happens to be a reporter in the North Shore as well, does some freelancing. And he said, at the beginning of the party, he's like, oh, I'm most likely doing a story on this kid who played for Lake Forest High School and at Notre Dame. His name is Riley Mills. Riley Mills ended up having a sack in the game for Seattle. So it was just hilarious. Like right in the middle, well, I'm doing the story. There's Riley
there you
Mills.
go. Super Bowl sack.
That's right. And we talked about our guy, your Illini guy, Devin Witherspoon, who was also excellent in that game.
Really, really good player. And, it's always fun for me. And here, there's this little two-pronged story here. But, I love reading the Monday coverage of the Super Bowl. Usually it's the first thing I do on the Monday morning after the Super Bowl. This Super Bowl was so boring that it was like the mid-afternoon on Monday when I finally got around to going through and reading stuff from around the country and people that were there covering the game and giving you some insight. But you forget that Devin Witherspoon was a guy that the Seahawks drafted in the first round with a pick that they got after trading Russell Wilson. Right. And so when you kind of zoom out on the reconstruction of the Seahawks and you understand what John Schneider did now in winning a second Super Bowl with a brand new head coach and a brand new quarterback and a brand new roster, you go, wow, that's pretty impressive. That guy did it twice, right? He did it in two different ways and had the foresight at the time that they got rid of Russell Wilson to say, we've got to start planning for our future. And did so in a way that clearly paid dividends. That's one small example where you wind up with a Pro Bowl DB that becomes a real playmaker for you in all facets. And so multi layers there to the way the Seahawks brought this thing alive over the last few years, really.
Yeah. And no doubt, man, John Schneider that's a championship GM right there, man. He knows what he's doing. Good cornerback play by a couple of guys. We're just talking about dudes. Really impressive to see Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah.
I mean, not much stood out for the Pats on this day, except for the fact that they were holding Seattle to field goal after field goal after field goal. But Christian Gonzalez, damn good player on their side as well.
Making some really good plays. And then, the last thing I'll say about the Seattle defense that's really cool is they play a lot of too high safety. And in order to do that effectively, the whole goal of that is to limit explosive plays, right? You're just going to tell other teams, we're not going to give up big plays tonight, try to beat us dink and dunk and beat us by 1,000 paper cuts. But in order to do that really to the level that they did it, you've got to be able to stop the run while not using safety help very often. And they were so good at that, on Sunday and really through the entire postseason run where you're like, wow, that's pretty cool to see that come to life where you can play with the two, the split safety look and then just really rely on your guys up front to handle the running game. And the New England never got anything going in the running game on Sunday. Obviously, the Drake Maye was getting battered. Eventually, he was turning the ball over, and all of a sudden, the whole thing had gotten away from you. And this wasn't like a lot of games where, Drake Maye's new to that stage, and you didn't really ever have a feeling they're still within arm's reach here. You know what I mean? You felt man, this is a young quarterback on a big stage, getting a little bit of young quarterback humbling here, and it's just going to end badly. And for Drake Maye, it ends with tears in the post-game press conference. And, the reminder to everybody, he plays in the AFC. Next year, Josh Allen is still around in his division. Patrick Mahomes will probably be back playing at a high level in 2026. Lamar and Joe Burrow are there. So you don't know that Drake Maye is going to get another crack at playing in a Super Bowl for a long time, and so that you understand that the pain and the anguish of seeing that opportunity slip away from you in the fashion that it did.
And I'm also thinking about the ebbs and flows, the up and down nature of this particular draft class of quarterbacks relative to Caleb Williams, because the story last year was Jaden Daniels, and everybody oh my God, the Bears, did they take the wrong guy? The Bears got the wrong guy. Does Caleb suck? Is Jaden going to be the top dude? And is he elite? Is he a great quarterback? And then he takes the step back this year. Drake Maye, of course, he was the runner-up for MVP. this year.
Yeah, people are peeing on Drake Maye's grave right now, right? Like he had a bad game in the Super Bowl and a bad postseason. And it's like, well, Drake Maye stinks, and you're like, wow, like really, we went there. The number 2 in the MVP voting is suddenly a guy that everyone is just battering like a birthday party pinata right now.
Right. And you use the word humbling. There is a humbling that goes on for all of these guys. It is ridiculous, but throughout all of it, and bringing it full Bears, Caleb stays right there in the picture, right? In terms of like the criticism that all these, like we just pointed it out, like Jay Daniels getting crushed this year, Drake Maye because of the Super Bowl getting crushed by everybody. It's open season always on Caleb. It's still interesting to me to think about where this ends up when the music stops out of Jaden Daniels, Drake Maye, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix. Who is like, what does next year have for us? Who's going to get crushed the most? Who's going to take the next big step? It's all in play still. I guess that's really what I'm trying to say. It could go any direction, man.
It's the perfect way to describe it. It's all in play, right? Like that should be our theme for 2026 as we start the Caleb Williams conversation anew. It's all in play. Like Caleb could become the hero that Chicago dreams that he's going to become. He could be the guy that brings the Lombardi trophy for a second time back to Haugh, or he could be a guy that just winds up as a middle tier quarterback in this league that goes through some really promising surges of success and then some low moments of mediocrity. You've heard me probably now over the last 6 months use the phrase psychological stamina 50 times, right? Like on this podcast.
Yeah.
There's no greater example of that than Sam Darnold, the guy who won the Super Bowl on Sunday after playing for the Jets and not doing so well and getting knocked out of Carolina, and then just kind of holding the clipboard in San Francisco, and then going kind of resurrecting his career in Minnesota, but then being let go from there and signing in Seattle. And now he's a Super Bowl champion. And you're like, man, like you give that guy credit for having the mental toughness to endure all of that and still be able to get himself at a level to win a Super Bowl. And now, like that's a guy now that in his career, you can never do this at that position, but you can take a brief sigh of relief and go, okay, you know what I mean? Like no matter how many punches I take for the rest of my career, I can always say, hey, you see this thing on my finger? It's a ring.
And speaking of fingers, you could kind of slowly put your middle finger up towards the Minnesota Vikings if you would like. Now, he could have put up 2 if he had gotten MVP. That's the only way this story would have been perfect if Sam Darnold had ended up being the one to get the MVP. But what he has done has been amazing. And it's not miraculous. I mean, this guy, what was he? Was he number 2 overall pick in the draft? Like, I mean, he was top 5,
highly drafted. Right? Yeah, for sure.
So this is not shocking. He just finally got himself into the right system. I just remembered or realized the analogy that I was trying to think of for these Bears for that draft class for Jaden Daniels, Drake Maye, Caleb, and it's like when you go to a Bulls game in the Dunkin' race and you think you know which one is going to win.
Perfect.
Here comes Cuppy Coffee, right? Here comes Biggie Bagel. Just when you think you got it, somebody comes from around and takes the mantle. And I don't know, but I needed to get that analogy out.
Those races are great. They've got the Wendella boat one, I think, at Soldier Field, where it's the water taxi versus the Wendella boat cruise versus I don't know what the third boat is there. But yeah, it's always the guy that's in last place with like 100 meters to go that ends up winning those damn things.
Yes.
So maybe that's instructive for us as we go through this era that we have now officially coined the "it's all in play" era. That's another. We've got one here on the Take the North podcast. It's all in play.
If it truly is all in play, that leads me perfectly in to a man named Maxx. And not just Maxx. He has 2 X's in that name. That's double X, Maxx Crosby. The word out there, the word on the street is that he reportedly told Tom Brady, who is owner of the Raiders, the team for which Maxx Crosby plays, that he will never play for the Raiders again, which has just about every team in the National Football League saying, how could we make this work? And Chicago, Dan, is not the exception. Can the Bears make that work in any way, shape, or form? Maxx Crosby to the Bears.
This, to me, as we sit here on February 10th, 2026, seems very far-fetched for a lot of reasons. The first reason being the Bears currently, for the 2026 new league year, when the calendar flips next month, in league standards, they are already over the salary cap. They've got to get under that before the new league year starts. And so you're already pressed up against the cap. And yes, you can restructure some deals and you can move some money around and do stuff. But every time you restructure a deal, it basically puts the weight on your cap in future years. And so you might want to do that for 2026, but it's going to come to really knock on your door and be really a heavy burden in 2028 or 2029 or whenever those bills come due to pay. The other part of this is to get Maxx Crosby, you do have to do more than just sign him. You have to trade him. And like if you use the Parsons trade from last year as a little bit of a guideline, the Packers had to give up 2 first-round picks and a 3-time Pro Bowler in Kenny Clark just to get Micah Parsons. And then once they got Micah Parsons, they had to give him a contract with an average annual value of $47 million a year in it, right? So you talk about the cost of Micah Parsons for the Green Bay Packers, and they won 9 games. And I get it. Micah got hurt, and you weren't anticipating him to get hurt. But, like, that's the dice roll that you're making when you go all in. And so this is where I know you've brought this up on your show on the radio a bunch, that like this swell of expectation in Chicago is going to need something at Halas Hall to pull it back down a little bit to remind people what the ultimate goal is. And while the goal is to win a Super Bowl next season, it's also to give yourself the maximum amount of swings to be in play to win a Super Bowl. And when you do this like all or nothing move, like it's going to be, you know, in the next couple of years that we've got to win it or else, you're limiting your ability to contend and sustain success down the road. And so I'll leave it back over to you there. It just feels like this conversation has gotten to an unrealistic level in the public forum, and it feels like you just need to remind people of the dynamics and the constraints and the parameters at play here.
Yeah, and you're right. It is predictable that, and it's just now beginning. I mean, we haven't really had the big wave yet. It's too soon. As we said, the season just ended with the Super Bowl, but once everybody gets back on the NFL wagon, and of course the combine is coming right up, and then the draft, that's where I'll put it. Wait till the draft. That's where it's going to get real loud. When the Bears come up, they're going to talk about the expectations that the Bears are going to have. We're going to hear things in Vegas about Caleb Williams being, you know, one of the favorites for MVP. It's all very possible and plausible. I think that, yeah, it's hard to imagine a scenario where they would make that massive of a splash. I feel like, in general, the Bears are in hiring from within mode, wanting the players that they have. And that doesn't mean that there's not going to be fresh players on this team. I mean, you alluded to it on the interior. Are they really going to roll back everything that they had on that interior? But Grady Jarrett is an example of one of the players that you look at and say, just to use him, and there's others, Dio Dangbo, be healthy, come back, hire from within. The guys that you have, a guy that you basically didn't have last year, Dangbo, much more will be expected from him. I've talked about Shamar Turner. Second round pick. You know what I mean? That's not nothing. So you still have to depend on some of the guys that you have not maxed out on that are already in your locker room.
That's the quintessential example of return on investment, right? Like ROI to the max in the NFL. And when you invest with either free agency money or premium draft capital, you need to get the return on investment in order to be a contender in this league. And so you mentioned a few guys there, Dangbo, Turner. You can throw Montez Sweat on that list. You can throw Grady Jarrett, obviously. We talk about
Billings back.
He's a free agent, and I don't necessarily expect him to be back. And then you look in the secondary, and you've got Jalen, and you've got Kyler, and if you decide to bring Byard back again, now you need to return an investment on that. On the offensive side of the ball, you've got this interior of the offensive line that you've invested heavily in. You need ROI. Caleb Williams is the number 1 pick in the draft. Well, guess what? Colston Loveland and Rome Odunze are top 10 picks. ROI. Those are the types of investments that you need to pay off in order to contend. Here's one other thing. I'm going to give you a little pop quiz here, since we've gotten really into pop quizzes here lately on Take the North. I'm going to name a bunch of teams, and you're going to tell me what they have in common.
Okay.
Seahawks, Rams, Packers, Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, Patriots, Chargers, Eagles, Lions, 49ers, Broncos, and Jaguars.
All teams with a quarterback on their second contract.
These are all teams that currently have better odds to win the 2026 Super Bowl than the Bears. Okay. And so this is just a reminder, because I think there's been this like swell in this town that it's the Bears' time, right? Like they had this breakthrough season. They've got this really promising head coach. They've got this really talented quarterback who showed notable growth last season. You know who else's time it is? All those teams that I just listed for you, right? Like every person in every one of those cities believes that they are in position to go make a run at a Super Bowl next year. And so you can't just sort of pat yourself on the back and say, we won a division, we had all these exhilarating moments, therefore we are the de facto favorite to go get the next Lombardi trophy. Like that's not how it works in this league. And it's just a reminder, because I think that the swell of euphoria here really since the season ended has been so massive, and it relates to what we talk about offseason expectations. You just got to remind yourself, like, that's the class that you're in. There's a lot of teams that are expecting to have a chance to make a run next year. And that's why I bring that up in the context of the Crosby conversation, because it's not like the Bears are one piece away. Like, you know what I mean? One piece probably jumps you over 5 of those teams, but not all 14 of them.
Yeah, no, it makes you better. And I think I know you or I, we have done it often, just alluded to tales of the past and in 2018, and then what happened right away in 19. Now this season is different because they actually won a playoff game, but we've all seen where we thought the Bears were a win away or a player away, a move away from getting to the next level, and sometimes you're simply not.
Yeah. And look, like that was stated very clearly by the head coach when he closed the doors and the book on the 2025 season. Like that's going to be the message for many, many months here as they try to reconstruct this thing and kind of realign it to go again. Like the goal here ultimately is to win the Super Bowl. But in order to win the Super Bowl, you've got to give yourself the maximum number of chances to be in the postseason and then get hot one of them and go make a run like Seattle just did and then shower in confetti and everything else is history.
Yeah, so players and then coaches. We keeping track of what's going on with the Bears coaching staff right now. We know that they hired the running backs coach. We talked about that on the last episode. Eric Studesville is here. And by the way, if you didn't catch the last episode, very popular episode because it's the episode where we reveal our predictions from the beginning of the season. The good, the bad, the ugly takes are played. Some are good, some are bad. So just a reminder to check that out if you would like. But Dan, Press Taylor, since last you and I spoke formally on this podcast, is the new offensive coordinator. And I know that you talked to him a ton out in the hallways of Hallett's Hall.
Well, hopefully it became clear over the course of the season that I really enjoyed this entire staff, offense and defensive assistants, because you felt like you learned a lot of ball in the time that we had with them in the midway at Hallett's Hall on Thursdays. And Press was a guy that was able to illuminate a lot of different things within the offense. He could talk very intelligently about Caleb's play, about the wide receivers, about the tight ends, about the O-line. So you could get a lot of information in a little bit of time from him. His promotion to this role, obviously, puts him in a, I guess I hate to frame it like this, but it's a servant role to Ben Johnson, right? Like, yes, coach, whatever you need, coach. Yes, coach, whatever you need, coach. Like that is what this is. And it's, as we've talked about many times here on the show, it's a table setting role where you've got to become an extension of the head coach. You've got to be somebody that is able to amplify the messaging of Ben Johnson. You have to understand what he wants out of every play, out of every rep of every practice. And then whether you're helping with the installation of plays or you're reviewing post-practice film, you've got to be a guy that can communicate as Ben Johnson when he's not there. And so I think the continuity part of this is going to be good. We'll see kind of how things gel together. Obviously, they had found a good rhythm with Declan Doyle there. Press, I think, is about 9 years older than Declan, so he's going to have to probably find a couple more energy drinks to work those late nights that Ben demands. But other than that, I think they've got a guy from in-house that they believe in. He's very bright and he's bought into what Ben is selling. And so that should be a good plus.
Yeah, no matter what, whether they hired from within or hired from the outside, they're going to have somebody who thinks enough like Ben and enough like the quarterback and can fit in and have his own ideas still, but really do what they need him to do. That was going to be the case. So I do think I think that this is a really good hire for the Bears to keep everything status quo. A couple more things here, Dan, before we get out of here. Things continue to move with the stadium scene in the Chicago, the Bears, the Bears and the state of Illinois, as we just learned, have apparently been meeting regularly since December. That was when the notification went out from the Bears that they might have some land that they might want to build a stadium in Hammond, Indiana. And at this point, those two things are looking in a good direction right now, at least as it pertains to Arlington Heights and the state of Illinois.
We've heard some more positive and optimistic rhetoric, particularly from Governor J.B. Pritzker recently, about the willingness of the state to kind of meet the Bears, part of the way with what they're asking for. As you and I kind of detailed on the last episode, the two main things that are at play here for the Bears to get this thing off the ground in Arlington Heights are some of that property tax certainty via the pilot legislation and the mega projects bill that would give them the opening to negotiate with the municipalities what their tax liability would be. And then the infrastructure promises that, like, if this project starts, we need the state of Illinois to promise to help us with the roads and the sewers and everything else that comes with a gigantic project like with that. It feels like there's at least positive momentum. I do always caution people that these things are a long way from the finish line, even when some of the headlines catch your attention and you're like, okay, there it is. It's a done deal. They're doing Arlington Heights. We're nowhere close to that yet, but at least it seems like the dalliance and the flirtations with Indiana has caught the attention of people in Illinois to say, oh boy, we better raise this on our priority list. Otherwise, we could have egg on our face if the Bears decide to take their home games across state lines.
Yeah, we may never know for real if it was a bluff by the Bears, but the state is taking it seriously. And that mega projects legislation that you referenced, that's what we wait for now, that if they are allowed to, as you said, negotiate with those municipalities, what does it mean for the taxpayers eventually? Some of that could be answered in there. And there's also the case of the Soldier Field debt payment from the renovation and how that gets was it $500 million?
Yeah,
$500 million outstanding public debt from the 2003 renovation.
That's part of this, but in the pie chart, that's a very small sliver of what is holding this up. Yeah, it's like a distant third with everything that's coming up with this project. So it'll be nice to get some clarity on this. Like the day that the Bears have a official stadium location and the day that Maxx Crosby has his new team are going to be a celebration day on Take the North, because I hate living in this world of speculative chaos that exists just because of the orbit we work in nowadays.
Oh yeah, we're in a very fragile state of the football season in terms of we're all looking for the right content right now, man. Nobody wants to fully. Here's what it really is, Dan. I know we gotta get out of here. It really is. Everybody's avoiding moving on to the next sport. Are we ready to really go full college basketball? Are we really ready for pitchers and catchers? Are we ready? Do we invest in the NBA, or do we have to wait till the playoffs? And then there's hockey as well. So it really it is this confluence of things and the lack of context right now or contact.
Well, clearly we're never fully ready to move on from football because it's become a 365-day a year spectator sport for the audience. And 2 weeks from right now, you and I are going to be wandering the hallways in Indianapolis trying to find people to talk to and information to gather. And so it's like, no rest for the wicked, clearly. But it's we're here. And so all these things have moving parts, and it's set up to be a different kind of offseason for the Bears. I don't know if I've shared this previously, but Kevin Fishbane and I, my colleague at The Athletic, we've had to kind of, sort of revisit the playbook that we've used over the last, well, not together, but over the last few off seasons. The Bears have been in the center of this part of the year, right? Like they own the number one pick. 2 years in a row. They've got quarterback flex. And now it feels like it's just calmer in that regard. There's a lot for them to do, but they're just not in the center of the beehive, I guess, so to speak, particularly as it relates to what the chatter and the buzz at the combine is going to be.
In the name of the Bears drafting where they have over the past several years, they invented a show for me at the Score called On the Clock, which I performed on Friday. It was all about the draft, and I would do it live from the combine. So you're right. We're all trying to figure things out here. The Bears are good. Act accordingly, right?
Right. And so like if they don't hang an offseason championship banner, it might be a good thing because it might mean that they have been positioned to succeed in a way that they don't have to go out and do all these things in the offseason to become a contender because they already are one. Right. Like, so that's a different kind of place to be.
We'll take the offseason very seriously. We do. We take it all very seriously around here at Take the North. That is going to do it for the episode for Wait, what was the radio name I gave you the other day? Weedman.
Weedman. Yeah.
Dan
we gotta
Weedman.
get that soundbite here. Yeah.
For Dan Weedman, Dan Wiederer of The Athletic and The Score. For our executive producer, Adam Stadzinski, I am Mark Grote saying thank you so much for watching and listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.